Okay, welcome everybody. It is Oni Onyabor, Peter Clampton, back with another video. It is Operation Goose Rocket Day 57, and we're making good progress on that. Check out the Operation Goose Rocket video for this week coming up, and like and subscribe if you've been liking these videos so far. Today we have submission. And yeah, we'll just be reading through this, seeing the quality of it, learning some nice writing tips, and hopefully it'll be helpful for you guys as it is for me. So let's go through and do this. I'm just going to put it up here and see if we can find it. But in later news, I hope everybody has having a good week and taking care of themselves. But yeah, all right. So today, let's talk about just starting out this prose here. So Ren was on his knees in the rain, as any good story starts with the character on their knees. Just kidding. Anyway, his body was heavy, far too heavy to lift even a single finger as he stared up at the light. Fat drops of rain were pelting his armor, soaking in the cracks and running down his body. It's a strong description. He felt cold, colder than he could ever remember, but there was a warmth on his face. Above him was a light. The battlefield was spotted with the orange flares of fire, the harsh light rising up through the smoke, display against the clouds in color, then as red as blood. Above him was a pure white light. Okay? Someone grasped his knee. Their fingers were weak and trembling, but they still tried to pull him down. Ren glanced down at the man, dark, woolen robes that had been soaked through and clung to his body. It wasn't rain, but blood. We were going to save you, the man said, grabbing onto Ren's other knees. Tears were running down his face, and when he coughed, blood ran down his lips. The man sobbed, pounding an arthritic fist on Ren's thigh. There was a hollow ringing like a bell. The bloody sword in Ren's hand clattered against the stone, and he stared back up at the light. It swam and twirled as though it were dancing in the wind. The light trailed and twisted as though it were eating up the light of the fires. Despite the wretched mayhem beneath it, glowed a soft blue. Ren's eyes began to burn. It felt like he was seeing for the first time in years. So my toughest thing right now is I'm liking the description. I have no idea where we are. The din of combat was a low static to Ren, but footsteps carried over it. The clang of metal on stone, the splash of boot through water. It was perfectly clear to Ren, just in time, the man said. He was a nobleman dressed like one. Like Ren, he wore full plate, but his was gilded with flowers and blades. Clutched around his shoulder was a green cape emblazoned with a white sun. He stopped at the top of the stairs and kicked over a knight's body. Okay, so they're in a city somewhere. The knight made no noise save that of his armor. An axe had been buried in the knight's neck. Ugh! But as Ren watched, the knight ripped it free and slowly sat up. This knight just, what? The noble nodded and walked on. He passed another fallen knight. As soon as he did, the knight began ripping crossbow bolts from his chest. This is dope! Crossbow bolts from his chest. The same happened with a third knight, resurrecting despite a collapsed breastplate. Then the nobleman stepped in front of Ren. Perhaps I should have sent 5 of you. You almost didn't kill them all, he said, looking between Ren and the roadman. Only the knights had resurrected. The half-dozen magi laid still in their blood. The nobleman's eyes narrowed. He leaned down, putting his face within a handspan of Ren's. The light above seemed to squirm. It darted across the clouds, bouncing back as though struck by a wall. The nobleman's visage eclipsed Ren's vision. How did you wake up? Out of the corner of Ren's vision, he saw the light blast across the sky like an arrow. The nobleman jumped upright, staring after it. The nobleman roared, throwing his arms up in the air. Ren slumped, falling down on himself. The robed man was laughing, his fingers covered in the wax of the binding circle. The rasp of drawn steel made Ren look up. The blade stabbed down, spearing the robe. Oh, what the? The blade stabbed down, spearing the robed man's heart. The nobleman drew it out, looked at Ren, and lopped his head off. What? So just so everybody understands, just to make sure I read this right. So this nobleman's roaring, throwing this stuff up. He's obviously a necromancer. He's rising all those people. Ren is not feeling this for some reason. And no, Ren slumped, falling down on himself. The roadman was laughing, his finger covered in the wax of the binding circle. So the man's laughing, being like, haha, I got this. The raps of drawn steel made Ren look up. The blade stabbed down, spearing the robed man's heart. The robed man? Is that Ren? Who's the robed man? The robed man's heart. The nobleman drew it out, looked at Ren, and lopped his head off. So Ren, I guess, is wearing armor and wearing a robe. Because I know he's wearing armor, but it doesn't say anything about him wearing robes. So that's a little weird, right? That's a little confusing. And then the nobleman. So I think just keeping things as they are and making sure our descriptions are solid. Because yeah, I'm like, I have no idea who the road man is. I'll say right now, in terms of story, there's a story here because that was wackalicious. As the nobleman's coming and he's just watching all these guys resurrect and pull the axe out. Because at first I thought, wait, was that when we had that first part where he says the knight? Where is it? Where the knight pulls his where is it? The knight. He stopped at the stairs and kicked over a knight's body. The knight made no noise to save that of armor. An axe had been buried in the knight's rack, but as Ben watched, the knight ripped it free and slowly sat up. Right? So here, like, this is a bit of a sudden jump, but as Knight and watched, the knight ripped it free and slowly sat up. So it's like, wait, the knight moved? So at first I thought, is this like the other man, the nobleman, and is he a knight? Is he using that interchangeably? But no, like the knight ripped it free and slowly sat up. Like he ripped it out of his own neck. So I think like there's just a little things here where like the prose could be a bit more clear on what's happening. So I'm not fully lost, but there's just some things in the prose that are getting lost and not super clear as to where I'm at and to how the scene's building. But there's a lot of very intriguing things already in this first part, especially like this nobleman coming up and then chopping this dude's head off, right? And I have no idea why Ren is on his knees or whatever, but there's already a story here. So I have a character, right, who's defeated. I don't know anything about Ren or what he needs or what's going through him, right? Or this battle. Like, I don't know where they set. You were going to save you, the man said. Their fingers were weak and trembling, but they still tried to pull him down. Ren glanced down at the man. We were going to save you, the man said. That's some context. So there's a hollow ringing like a bell. The man saw pounding on Ren's thigh. So you see some people are disappointed with Ren. We don't have too much understanding of his character, if I'm being honest. But like you already can see that there's something there, right? And then you have the nobleman, obviously, like being a total like weirdo. I guess he's a necromancer or whatever, and he comes out. So you have some interesting stuff happening. You're getting into the character and you're building up the setting with the atmosphere. So there's a battle. You're having some strange things happening, which is building up the natural tension in the setting. So we see that, okay, this is probably not like non-hostile territory. And then he gets his head lopped off. Like, that's whack. So we're already with it. We're already in it. So let's just keep going. Wake up! A foot pounded into Ren's head again and again. It was like a hammer striking his helmet with a wall for an anvil. Not the best, but I'll take it. I said wake up. Something hot grinded against his chin, burning the skin. Ugh. Jen's male hand moved up and grabbed the boy's wrist, pushing him away. There was smoke in the room. It had the cinnamon smell of flare wood. His chest expanded like a bellows, sucking in the smoke, and he flipped his visor down. Next to him was a nobleman just come of age. He looked familiar, but Ren couldn't place him. The lordling had on a suit of chainmail with a green tabard. Emblazoned on the front was a white sun. Ooh, same thing. He stuck the flare-weed cigarette back in his mouth and puffed on it. You stupid Ritter. Be grateful I woke you up, the lordling said, kicking his feet up on the opposite bench. The room rocked and Ren realized they were in a carriage. Pulling the shutter open. This is good, right? Because he thought, I love how the room rocked, and he's talking about the room, and then he realizes it's in a carriage. So this sort of changing perspective, changing the setting with realization, this is good. Pulling the shutter open, he peered out the woods around them. Snow had fallen, but the fresh blanket had been broken by footsteps. Is he cold from the snow? Does he feel that? Look, the lordling said, kicking Ren in the leg. I'm here to prove myself, and you're here to keep me from dying. Ren failed to see how the lordling could prove would be proving anything. The diviners say there's a spirit in this village. I'm going to kill it, the lordling said. His hand flourished, a dagger his hand flourished, and a dagger appeared in his hand. Don't you look away from me. Don't you look away from me, he shouted. Why do I have an English accent? Who knows? Why does he have an English accent? That's the real question. He shouted when Ren turned back to the window. He popped the door open and icy air washed through the carriage. Good job. Snow latched onto his steel as he stepped out of the carriage. He slammed into the ground, crouching down to keep from tumbling, then rose back up. The lordling started shouting, and the horses whinnied as they as they were forced to stop. Ren didn't listen as he was shouting at this. He shouted at this to stop. Okay, that's a little bit of a writing error. He just marched into the woods. The kid jumped out of the carriage, fighting with his cape as the wind blew it off him. You will obey me, Ritter. I don't know what that means, Ritter. Is that his name, or is that just like a class thing? I don't know what Ritter means, but he's calling him that. He shouted, drawing his sword. It was a sleek, curved blade with a golden crossguard. Ren drew his blade, a heavy and straight shaft of steel. It was old and covered with the war between rust and polish. That's a really good way to say that. Good job. A Ritter's blade darkened as it killed. And, so this is like a class of people. A Ritter's blade darkened as it killed, and his was like coal. He stared at it, unsure why he knew that. Then a crossbow slammed in the side of his skull. Golly! His head snapped to the side, the bolt glancing up into the air. The lordling stumbled back, and Ren turned towards the bolt. His left arm rose instinctively, but he found himself grasping at air rather than a shield. Another bolt hit his gorget, glancing off and making him take a half step back. Seemed unfinished due to dissatisfaction. I don't know what you're dissatisfied about, man. Like, obviously it's not perfect. The prose could be better, but like, you have a story here. Okay, so there's a story here, everybody. So obviously I didn't get the synapse of everything kind of going down, but there's definitely a story here. So we have a character, right? This character has died and come back from the dead. This is an interesting premise already enough, right? And then he's getting hit. There's this random kid. It's a little fast, I will say. And we don't have the context of what's going on. So the premise is just this guy's been resurrected. And it's obviously not much of a scene. Like, I'll say the scene isn't very developed because we went from one where he was eventually with this necromancer, died, and then is back with this other kid, like this quick flash scene, like a 5-second scene. Like, it'd be like the prologue scene of like a long TV series you'd watch. But then he's with this kid, and I have no idea who this kid is, but I'm intrigued because I know this dude's just come back from the dead, and I don't know what a Ritter is. Right. And then we talk about a Ritter's sword. That's make it intriguing. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of potential in this piece. I feel like maybe the author was being a little too critical of themselves, right? Like, I don't know where it was going in terms of story. And like I said, we definitely need to start getting those synapses, but those synopses, not synapses, summaries. But real talk, I really like this story. I don't know why they gave it up on it too soon. Like, if you were going to talk about like what needs to be cleaned up, I think the prose definitely could be more engaging, for sure. Because some of the analogies really hit. Like, so a good example of an analogy that really hit was like the war between rust and polish. That was a pretty good one. But then there's some parts that aren't making any sense or whatever. But I mean, we were just jumping into a scene. Like, there's a lot going on that I didn't fully understand, but it was making sense, if that makes sense. That makes sense. 5 cents, a dime. So what I mean is that there was enough story here going on with the character and the setting. Like, not that you drew me fully in, but I would keep reading just to finish it. Right? Like, if this was I don't know if this was supposed to be the first chapter of a book or a short story. I didn't put that in there. I need to start putting that in the description. But this was good, right? At least it was intriguing enough that I want to keep reading it. I want to say, like, okay, who the heck was this kid? Why is he trying to prove himself? Like, you put enough questions, you introduced enough questions, and you were giving answers at a rate in terms of the environment. Like, uh, things made sense. Like, this was built. There's some strong story chops with this as starting out. You started with your story, you were moving up to your setting, things became clear-ish. Not really, premise wasn't really first and foremost here, but you really built a setting. So you built a fantasy setting, obviously sort of like generic kind of like medieval England. There's magic, of course. And now a dude's coming back to life with this little kid, and for some reason this kid needs him. Like that, there's a story there. There's a story there. And you didn't hit me with a bunch of random stuff, and you did that. What was it? Maybe 1,000 words. There was a story there. So the person stopped it with dissatisfaction. I'm not dissatisfied. I wish they'd done more. So maybe this person was a little too harsh on their own writing, that they didn't give it a chance, or maybe they didn't have a full story with it, so they're just writing a good scene or whatever. Either way, I still think there's a story there, and I wish it continued. But I think this is a good example of when sometimes you don't know what something is until you at least finish it or get to it. Like sometimes, like some things don't work, right? And you go on and you can give it up. But some things are worth seeing through to the end, right? Like at least as a chapter or something. Like this just kind of dropped off in the middle of the story. So we don't even know what it could have been or if it was leading in anything. Like I don't know if it's a short story or chapter one. I think that's the thing about any story, any writing. So that's the big lesson here is that things are worth finishing. Like if you start something, you don't necessarily have to, like, for instance, if you start a book, you don't have to write the whole book, but maybe finish the first few chapters and see if it works for you, right? But if you just leave things halfway through, you never know what it could do. And this is much better than I think the author was giving it credit for. Whether it was a short story, the first chapter of a book, like there was a story here. So that was worth kind of getting a shot at. But we didn't get to see it, and alas, we never will. Who knows? But that's something to think about. I hope the author will keep writing. I have a suspicion that they will, and I'm excited to keep it going. Anyway, if you guys learned something from this story, let it like and subscribe, share it. As today's video is sponsored by Pro-Lit-Fic Writing, my writing career education platform where I help you follow your dreams and write better. For those dedicated to the craft and who want to level up, check out Pro-Lit-Fic Writing, message me, and we can talk about how you can improve your craft. Other than that, there's no other questions. Leave a comment down below of what you guys thought of this story. I'd be interested in what your thoughts were. And then, yeah, see if would you like it to keep going? Were you dissatisfied with it? What do you think could help it improve? I'm interested in your guys' thoughts. Anyway, Operation Geese Rocket Day 57. Keep it up. Keep following. Submit your stories down below if you got some you'd like to be read and get some critique, or what is it? I'll just look at, right? A look-see. But yeah, that's the end of today's video. Thanks. Stay happy, stay healthy, and remember, you're the author of your own story, so keep writing. Peace.